welcome Hoosier fans to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio, where each week we discuss the most important topics in the world of Indiana basketball. This is our 216th edition of Assembly Call Radio and our 716th episode overall of the Assembly Call, recorded on the evening of June 10th, 2021. I'm your host, Andy Bottoms. And let's begin this edition of the Assembly Call how we begin every edition of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment.
And Indiana is the national champion.
When it comes down, Indiana will be champion.
Smart takes the shot.
The Hoosiers have won the national championship.
All right, and once again, I give credit for this week's banner moment to Jared Morris, who hopefully will be able to join us about midway through tonight's show. But as he wrote here, this week's banner moment occurred today as two important events converged to make it a very important day for the immediate and also medium-term future of Indiana basketball. First event is the beginning of on-court workouts with coaches. As you know, coaches don't have an unlimited amount of time to work with players in the offseason. There's a set number of hours per week, 8, and a max number of hours per day, 2, that coaches can work with players. But as we discussed last week, a recent rule change has expanded the number of coaches who can participate in these workouts. It used to just be the head coach and 3 official assistants, but now 2 additional non-assistant coaches can work with players on the court. With a new staff in place, bringing in new areas of on-court emphasis, plus a total of 6 new players on the roster, this on-court time will be critical for Indiana to build cohesion and chemistry. The second event is a trio of unofficial visits that were scheduled to take place on Thursday, including Jeremy Fears, the number 23 player in the class of 2023, who currently plays for La Lumiere, and I believe received a scholarship offer today. At least that's what I saw before we hopped on here. And anytime that talented players step foot on campus, it's a major opportunity for Indiana to make a good impression that will hopefully lead to foundational commitments down the line. Seems like a lot to you for one day, workouts, and 3 unofficial visits. It is. And as Jay Horry wrote in our Assembly Call community earlier today, this underscores the importance of the new expanded basketball coaching and administrative staff that Scott Dolson and Mike Woodson have put in place. 20-year NBA coaching veteran Armand Hill was added to that staff this week to go along with Woodson, 3 assistants, Thad Mata, Cliff Marshall, new graduate assistant Isaac Green, who's known for his player development, and a handful of others in basketball administration. So while some people may look at those coaches and think too many cooks in the kitchen, that's really the wrong restaurant metaphor. With so many existing players and prospective players needing attention at one time, it's more like staffing up your restaurant with enough servers to be able to manage a rush. Indiana basketball now has plenty of attention and expertise to go around, and as long as Mike Woodson can keep his staff all on the same page, it can only benefit Indiana in this new, ever-changing, and volatile college basketball landscape. All right, let me introduce my esteemed co-host for tonight. Coach is off again this week, and as he mentioned a few weeks back, his wife had surgery this week, so he's taken off a few weeks to be her man nurse, as this says. I'll let you create your own mental image of that, if you will. We're happy to report that surgery went well. Mrs. Tonsoni is home and recovering, and that really is this week's banner moment. Jared does say he'll be on later. We'll see about that, but here with me, to my right, is the world's most prolific or annoying, depending upon your perspective, San Diego Padres live tweeter.
Analyzing players, find every wrinkle. He hasn't ever hosted, never lifted a finger. He's got all the answers.
Well, let me quickly add just one thing about this.
Dude just interrupted his own jingle.
And as Jared wrote here, Ryan might be a little distracted tonight, but you need to forgive him because Fernando Tatis Jr. is mired in a 3-for-22 slump that has seen his batting average drop from 299 all the way to 277. Meanwhile, James Shields' Chicago White Sox have the second best record in all of baseball. So, Ryan, as this says here, would you like to rant about the Padres, or is something else on your mind tonight? Or would you like to save your baseball-related rants for when Jared allegedly joins us later?
I'll save them for later, because basically the thing that's hilarious to me is Jared had to look up those stats knowing that his beloved White Sox franchise made the boneheaded decision to trade the face of baseball for James Shields, who imploded in his years in Chicago. So that actually makes me happy that he put that statistic up there, because it meant he had to look through the statistics and count them up. Fantastic. Yeah, I think this week the big news was obviously Tamar Bates and Logan Duncombe getting on campus over the weekend, and then the video that posted, I think it might have been yesterday or today, of Tamar Bates going through the locker room and just kind of, hanging out with his teammates for the first time, and he was really hyped up, and all the teammates were hyped up for him to be there. I just think he's got that personality. It's sort of a star quality personality. And I always refer to Victor Oladipo when I talk about him. And it may not be a one-to-one match skill-wise, but I just think he's got that electric personality that Victor had. And I think that's something that's been missing from Indiana basketball for a while. I think Yogi Ferrell had it, but really other than that, I don't think they've had that sort of star quality personality and that sort of, it's a weird thing to say, but sort of that walk in the room and you're the center of attention kind of guy. They've had a lot of good kids, but not the guy that is the guy who is sort of like the focus personality wise and the kind of loud and kind of boisterous and all that. We've always talked about silent leaders, guys who were quiet leaders and who led by example. Well, you need the guy who's going to step up and be loud too. And I think that's something that they've needed for a long time, sort of an alpha male personality. And I think that they got it in Tamar Bates. So great to see him on campus working out, getting in there with his teammates, getting to know him. And we'll see what kind of an impact he has this year. And just watching those scenes of he and Logan Duncan moving in over the weekend were pretty great.
Yeah, I mean, probably much like your experience when you moved in, just like it was mine as you moved to campus and walked into a place that looked like that, right?
Beautiful apartment, completely furnished.
Is that what your experience?
Nice island in the kitchen. All of that, perfectly furnished. Well appointed, nice huge TV. Exactly.
Probably air conditioned, unlike my dorm room. I mean,
where'd you live, Andy?
I was at Briscoe.
Okay.
I was at Briscoe down the hall from AJ Guyton and Luke Jimenez. But,
nice.
When you're I think we were on the ninth floor, maybe 11th floor of a building with no air conditioning. It was really, it was comfortable.
So I moved in. When I moved, obviously people know that I moved to Indiana as a transfer. I was 22 when I moved. And so we bought a condo. My family did because we figured it'd be better than paying rent for 3 to possibly 4 years, given my academic history. But we moved in like the week classes started. So it was like second to last week of August. And, I'm from Southern California where it's very dry. There's not a whole lot of humidity. There's an ocean breeze everywhere in San Diego. Moved in, it was 95 degrees with 93% humidity. So that was a wake-up call. Lifting boxes, going up several stairs. So it was crazy. And we lived in my buddy who moved out to go to IU with me, and I lived in a pretty nice place, but nothing at all like what the basketball. And you know what? Good for the basketball, because I'm glad they're doing that for them. They can all live together in that apartment complex.
All right, so here's what we're going to cover this week outside of our jealousy over the living arrangements of the basketball players. Hoosier headlines. The big one this week is about IU's off-season trip that was announced. And then our main topic, it's an off-season AMA. So you send in questions. We have answers. And then we've got our final 2 segments, and beyond will be spent answering your questions. So all of that coming up this week on Assembly Call Radio. But first, let me find all the right things to actually put on the screen here. All right, here we go. Now we're good. Before we get to Hoosier headlines, I want to take a minute and introduce you to Manscaped, who provides support for this podcast. I know we've had some laughs over the last couple of weeks because of this sponsorship, and it gives us a chance to talk about balls in a different context, but don't let the silliness of the ads overshadow just how good the product is. Manscaped's product line is the best in the industry when it comes to male grooming, starting with the Lawnmower 4.0. With the Lawnmower, Manscaped engineered the ultimate groin and body trimmer by focusing on intelligent functionality and an incredibly comfortable grooming experience. They sent all of us our own lawnmower, and we all agreed that it works better than any other groin grooming solution we've tried. And this is something we obviously talk about as a group of the 4 of us frequently. And I know the idea of groin grooming can be as comforting as a trip to the Kohl Center, but fear not. Manscaped's 4th-generation trimmer features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. Plus, it features wireless charging and a 4000K LED spotlight when you need it for a more precise shave. And with Father's Day coming up fast, Manscaped's products make a great gift for dads and sons everywhere. Over 2 million men worldwide are already Manscaped, and we have this exclusive offer for you. Get 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code AC at manscaped.com. Again, that's promo code AC at manscaped.com for 20% off your order and for free worldwide shipping. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped. All right, Ryan, let's hit some Hoosier headlines now. And the big one, as I mentioned before is the off-season trip to the Bahamas. So looks like it's August 10th through the 16th. As of now, there are only 2 games scheduled. I heard I got a chance to listen to podcasts on the Brink this week with Alex and Zach Osterman. They talked about this a little bit on that podcast, just in terms of, you know, whether that really suggests that by design this trip is a little bit more about, you know, kind of team bonding, building chemistry, getting
Usually
those
these
extra
are
practices in than it is playing games. Yeah, but I know. I mean, they referenced kind of the last couple of trips that you had where they played more. You know, I think the Canada trip they played 5 games, and some of that I think you can play up to. Yeah, I mean, maybe there's less to do. You just wanted to play basketball while you're in Canada, as opposed to the Bahamas. You just only want to fill the time of 2 games with what you're doing. Leave yourself more time to just hang out. But anyway, so 2 games against BC Mega of Belgrade, Serbia, which at least at last we saw features Scoochie Smith, Archie's 4-year point guard from Dayton. So huge revenge game there. But IU does get 10 full team practices, and that's really, I think, where the benefit comes in addition to the team bonding and things like that from an off-season trip standpoint. So, Ryan, thoughts on when you heard that news and just kind of what you think they'll be able to get out of that overall?
Well, let's put it this way. After missing out on Maui, they deserved a tropical location. A lot of these guys. I mean, Asheville, lovely as it may be, is not Maui in November. It's Asheville in November. So it's nice that they get to go do something kind of fun and vacation-y as a destination. But yeah, this is about practice. It's all about team building. I know if they only play 2 games, I mean, this is about getting out of your comfort zone and getting to bond, doing something where there's no distractions of, you know, family, girlfriends, schoolwork, whatever you've got. I'm sure they will do some schoolwork on this, but it's going to be basically spending time together, practicing, and then doing like touristy things. I'm sure they'll go to the beach and get to hang out for a couple days together. They'll get to go do whatever there is to do there and do it together. And so again, it's a bonding thing where there will be prescribed things they will do. And the thing is, they'll be doing it only together. And I think that's what the team building aspect is. There's a reason why the Maui Invitational and a lot of those travel invitational tournaments are early in the season. It's to get guys off campus, get them out of the distraction world, and go do something together, have those games, play good competition, but also be alone. They build, there's a lot of team building there. You're traveling a long way together and all of that really bonds them. And so that's the whole point. What happens in the games, we shouldn't read into. It's, if they only get 2, that's fine. They'll be practicing, they'll be working hard. I'm sure they'll be scrimmaging, all of that stuff. But the whole point of this is just to get the team closer and to sort of establish leadership, establish everything you're going to establish, and bring the new guys in. And there's a lot of new guys on this roster to bring in and put together. So I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, I think between, like you said, you mentioned the number of new guys on the roster. You've also got so many new guys on the coaching staff, and I think in that more isolated scenario, it really encourages some of that team bonding that you talked about. And from a practice standpoint, I think it was Zach on that podcast that talked about likening it a little bit. Obviously, the timing of it's different, but the extra practices that football teams get when they get to a bowl game, and some of the things you're able to work on there and being able to really get benefit from those. Yeah,
and a lot of teams, if they have 3 weeks to prepare for their bowl game and they have practices, a lot of teams for the first week will take all the young guys, they'll give a break to the starters and have your freshmen and sophomores play a lot in those practices because they're not getting those reps during the season because you got to prep for your next game. And so this is kind of similar. It's you give those guys more reps during the bowl practice period to give your starters a bit of a rest after the season. And then this is kind of the same thing. You're getting the guys, and of course the whole coaching staff's new too. So, I mean, they'll get to work on things that they haven't worked on before, but really it's about getting the guys that weren't part of the team and bringing them into it as well. And just the team as a whole, getting to maybe establish their personalities, their chemistry, all of that stuff.
Well, and I think in games that don't matter in the grand scheme of record and things like that, again, with the new faces, you give yourself a chance to tinker with some different lineup combinations and things like that to see who's playing well together, give guys some experience, some of the younger guys. So I think, pretty much 100% benefit from my standpoint. I don't really see any downside. You're not giving up anything to go and do this, and you're getting extra time together, extra practices. So seems like a win. The only, I guess, potential downside for fans is that the games will not be televised, at least not as of this point. That obviously could change, but I get the feeling that seems unlikely.
Somebody's going to leak a stream of it somewhere.
There we go. And so I assume that means no post game shows, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it in August. Other couple things. You mentioned one of these. Tamar Bates and Logan Duncombe arrive on campus. Looks like they'll be roommates. And then Jared had alluded to it in the banner moment, but they named Armand Hill Director of Basketball Administration. He worked with Mike Woodson on the Clippers staff from 2014 to 2018, has 15 seasons as an NBA assistant, 8 years as the head coach at Columbia, and was the Ivy League Player of the Year at Princeton. So another well-rounded piece of the of staff comes into play. Any thoughts on, I know you mentioned the Bates thing, any thoughts on the Armand Hill addition?
It seems great. I mean, a lot of people, a lot of people have praised the hire, and I don't know a ton about him until today. I didn't know a ton about him until today, but I think it's, it seems like a good hire. Everybody's praising it, and somebody with a lot of experience, and somebody I'm sure that, Mike Woodson is very familiar with. So I think that as far as a chemistry on the staff situation, and I think that gets underrated a lot, is it's not just about having the highest, the top level assistant coaches. You've got to have assistant coaches who can work together and who get along and have personalities that mesh and things like that. So I know that you always want to let's go get the top 3 assistant coaches in college basketball and just bring them in and smash them together, and you'll have an ace staff. Well, when you interview those guys, you got to make sure that their personalities match. And that's why a lot of times guys who you might think, oh, that's a lower tier assistant, well, they might have a great relationship with the other guys on the staff. And that's why they get there. So somebody who, I'm sure that Mike Woodson knows, or at least, other people have recommended to him who he trusts and all that. So I think this is a solid hire.
Yeah, I would agree. I think kind of fits the bill, a guy that Woodson is familiar with and can trust. And again, another guy with NBA experience that we've talked to Woodson's experience at the NBA. I think having another guy with that kind of experience is useful. And clearly at that standpoint, understands college coaching and player development. And I think, as Tyler was mentioned in the chat, it's another guy who, with those new rules, can help coach in the offseason and do some of those things with the players, even when the staff might be out recruiting. So a good point on that as well. All right, so that will do it for the Hoosier Headlines. And when we come back, it's AMA time. You sent in a bunch of questions, some IU related and some not, and we're going to power through all of them next. Stick with us here on the Assembly Call. All right, welcome everybody.
Well, PJ Tucker just got into it with Kevin Durant, and I'm taking Tucker in that fight. By the way, he's a tough guy.
Yeah, I would probably do that with you there. Cool. Well, welcome everybody. Other potential banner moment, although I don't see her in the chat. I think Tax Megan and Willis 20th anniversary today. So
wow,
happy anniversary to them if they are on here, which I don't know necessarily why you would be on your anniversary, but if they were, good. If not, they'll pick this up when they listen back later. So
yeah, exactly.
All right. So let's see. So we got this, I guess everybody listening, we got the we'll do the basketball questions in this segment and the non-basketball ones in the last one. So talk through that. Yeah, it does look like they offered Fears on his visit. I know Joel was saying it looked like his family was having a good time in Bloomington, as anyone should. So I'll be interested to see how quickly. Oh my goodness, what do we have here? I don't have any music to play for such an occasion, but
gentlemen,
wow, he's alive.
It's nice to
text or email is the only thing I've seen from Jared in months.
It is nice to finally be here on Assembly Call Radio, but the circumstances aren't that great. My daughter is asleep early, but it's because she's like sick and not really feeling well. Oh. So on the downside, she's not really feeling well, so she went to bed early. On the bright side, it's Thursday night and I can hop on Assembly Call Radio. So
look at that.
Yeah,
There you
We'll
go.
take what we can. We'll take what we can get. Take what we can get. What I miss?
You just caught us in between the first segment, so we
Okay.
just talk a little about the off-season trip and stuff like that, and getting ready to hop in and answer the questions.
Nice. Very cool.
So, all righty.
All right.
Let's start that now.
Hey, this is Max Bielfeldt, Big Ten champ and better than advertised Sixth Man of the Year in 2016. And speaking of better than advertised, join Jared, Andy, Ryan, and Coach on the assembly call after every IU basketball game. Go Hoosiers.
And welcome back to the assembly call. So how do you keep up with the fire hose of information that comes out almost every day about Indiana basketball? It's crazy during the offseason and even crazier during the season. Well, we've got your back. We send out a free weekly email newsletter on Sunday mornings, rounds up the most important and interesting IU basketball stories from the previous week to keep you up to date on your Hoosiers. Over 8,000 of your fellow IU fans are already on the list, and we want you to be on there as well. So go to join.assemblycall.com to subscribe for free now. That's join.assemblycall.com. Or you can text IU to 66866. Again, that's IU to 66866. All right, I'm Andy Bottoms here with Ryan Phillips, and Jared Morris has joined us in between segments here. So it is off-season AMA time, and so let's see, what do we have first? All right, so like I said in the break, we're going to split these up with the hoops-related questions first. These came in via our private IU basketball discussion community at assemblycall.com/community. So go there to learn more about it. And all right, hoops related questions first. So Robert, with recruits visiting today and for the rest of the summer, which prospects do you want to see most wear the cream and crimson in the class of 2022? Two guys that intrigue me the most are Kyle Filipowski and Jalen Washington. Ryan, thoughts on any of the guys that really are at the top of your list of the 2022 class?
Well, Jalen Washington has to be number one. He's the top player in the state of Indiana. You always want to get the top player in the state of Indiana. I know there's a lot of competition for him, but 5-star big guy with Trace probably leaving after this year. I think it's a great fit. I think that he's a guy who's got a lot of interest in IU, but he's got a lot of interest nationally as well. I mean, teams interested in him. Keeping him at home would be huge. Indiana has had a rough time recruiting the northern part of the state as well for years. That needs to change under Mike Woodson. You can't have just cede the northern half of the state to Michigan State and other schools. You just can't do that. I think he's number one on the list. I agree. I like Filipowski a lot, a big guy who can shoot it, something that Indiana hasn't had in a long time since Max Bielfeldt, the guy who did our intro right there. Was that planned? Because that was good, guys. But
I wish that I had coordinated it that well,
yeah.
But I can't take
it. I think those two guys would be big. I think also you're going to need to find a guard somewhere, but you've got CJ Gunn already. I have a feeling it's going to be a big class, and it's usually the first full recruiting cycle for a new coach is usually a big class because guys transfer in, guys transfer out. They see how they fit in the system, all that. But I would definitely say that Washington and Filipowski at the top of my list. There are higher ranked guys than Filipowski. I just like what he does, and especially if you're going to do a 4-out kind of thing, you're going to need people who have some size and can shoot, and he's a guy who does that. Jalen Washington to me is the no-brainer, though, at the top of the heap.
Jared, are those the two guys for you, or I guess feel free to give your thoughts on them, but also if there are any guards that stand out to you as you look down the list, since those are both big guys.
Yeah, I like both of those guys, and I haven't kept up with the recruiting as much this offseason yet in terms of watching some of these guys. So it's just kind of seeing names flash across and seeing stars next to their name. Filipowski, I did actually watch some video on, and he looks really, really good. Anybody who can shoot consistently. I think there's the kid Justin Taylor. I think he's another one who's kind of a wing, who's a pretty good shooter. And then did you guys talk about how we offered a scholarship to Jeremy Fears in the class of 2023 earlier today?
Yeah. You had put that in the banner moment, but I did tack on that they had given him an offer. Yeah.
So, look, I think, this is one of those things. It's interesting to try and figure out, which guys you want because, it's a new staff. We haven't yet seen, how they're going to play, kind of what players are going to fit. Although, we kind of feels like we spent 4 years doing that with Archie, and then we got to the end of those 4 years, and we still kind of didn't really know who was the right fit and what that all would have meant. So, it's interesting to see, who they're targeting. Which obviously is, they're clearly putting a premium on shooting, which is good. They're putting a premium on size. It seems like they really want some versatile defenders. So I'm really very, very interested to see, what kind of class they end up with. But I think Filipowski and Washington are there at the top of the list. And then other than that, get shooters. Because if we're going to play offense the way Mike Woodson wants to play offense, we've got to have guys who can make shots. And I think, for a long time in this program, the last 4 years, we've prioritized a lot of things over shooting in recruiting. And it seems like we're getting back to putting more of a premium on shooting, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think, the two big guys are interesting. As I look down the list, just really looking over the board at inside the hall, guard wise, you've got CJ Gunn, who's already committed. So that's one guy that fills that role. But really, Jalen Hood Shafino, I think is how you
he's the other
last
guy.
Name.
Yeah.
He's the one that's ranked one of the highest that's at least on their list. So I think that would be a potentially interesting one. It sounds like Kenya Hunter's been doing a lot of stuff with him. So that might be another name to watch. But yeah, I think Jalen Washington feels like he's at the top of the list, just being an Indiana guy and some of those things. But yeah, they mentioned him. Seth Trimble is another guard that's on there, though. At least based on this, Michigan seems like a potential front runner, and he also has a brother that went to North Carolina. So be interested to see what happens there. But yeah, I think big guys feels like largely the way to go. But it depends a little bit on, what does Xavier Johnson do? How does some of these new guys work out, and some of that happen. But all right, so that's question one. All right, so this one is a little bit related from Phil. Which IU players will move on after the season? Which recruits are a priority to replace those that do? I think touched on this a little bit. In terms of players moving on, Trace seems incredibly likely to be somebody that moves on. I think that feeds into a little bit of some of the top names on people's lists in terms of in terms of recruiting. But you could see it's just odd because you've got some of these guys who've got this extra year, whether they really want to take it or not. So a guy like Race, Rob Finnessy, some of those things. I think it's a little bit hard to gauge who wants to take advantage of that free year and who may not. So I don't know if you got anything to add much on that one, but Trace seems like the only clear cut one that's likely to be gone, but otherwise a little bit tough to guess.
Yeah, Trace is almost certain. It's crazy that you look at the scholarship chart. I'm looking at the scholarship numbers on Inside the Hall. There's nobody who has to leave. Everybody on the roster could conceivably come back next year if they wanted to, because of the extra year, which is nuts. And certainly I don't think that'll be the case. I think, Xavier Johnson and Miller Kopp are two guys who are transferring from their previous schools and coming to Indiana because they want a different system. They want a way to showcase themselves to get to the next level. And I think if one or both of those guys has the kind of seasons that we hope that they have, they could be candidates to go and be ready to start their professional career because they will have played 4 years in college by that point, and they have skills that can translate to the next level if some of the other parts of their game come around. So that'll be interesting to see. And then, I would not, I think it's pretty safe to say that Tamar Bates and Logan Duncombe, will probably be back. This will be their first year. I think Bates projects to have a role as a freshman. And I think, Duncombe, I don't know what he's expecting, but he's a big man that I'm sure understands, that it's going to take a little bit of development for him. What I think will be interesting is the group of Trey Galloway, Anthony Leo, Jordan Geronimo, and Christian Lander. All guys with a lot of talent, a lot of potential, but all guys who, have some people above them, in terms of age, and guys who were brought in new this season, playing the roles that they may have seen themselves playing before the roster was filled in. And so, how those minutes shake out, how satisfied those guys are with the roles that they end up having, I don't think anybody would be shocked to see one or two of those guys end up moving on to a place, where they feel like it'll be a better fit if this season doesn't go right. And I think we like all of these guys. We want all of these guys to be a fit, but with, 13 legit talented players like Indiana has, it's just not possible. So who's willing to be patient? Who's willing to buy into a longer term vision of the program? And who, wants a little more instant gratification in terms of being able to play and have a role that they like? I think it would be silly to try and project it, but I think it would also be silly to say, oh yeah, all 4 of those guys will definitely be back in the new age of college basketball. So I don't know who it'll be, but I will not be shocked if 1 or 2 of those guys at the end of the year decides they want to try another place.
Yep. This one from Brian. After watching Rob Finney play in high school and seeing his confidence go down every year with the Miller regime, I'm hopeful that his confidence will look more like it did in high school with a change of coaches. Am I delusional? And what do you guys think this year will look like for Rob?
I'm starting to see more and more of this. The Rob Finney senior year fan club is it's filling up. People haven't learned their lessons from the last few years, apparently. I love this.
People, do you mean you, or is that directed at others?
I would think that people would have learned their lesson from me. But see, I love this about Indiana fans. Look, this is the thing. You give Indiana fans 3 good years, even if the basketball isn't great. But if you're there and you play hard and you do the right things and you stick it out, Indiana fans are going to be behind you. And I think that's what we're seeing here from Rob Finney, which is, as has happened before, an entire fan base trying to will this to happen because we want it so badly for the guy, because we saw it as a freshman. He's made big shots. He's had these flashes. And now, this might be his last go around. Who knows? He would have another year too. And the narrative got a little jolt with some of the comments that Dane Fife made. I think a lot of people know that Dane Fife struggled with anxiety and struggled with his confidence. And he's kind of talked about taking Rob Finney under his wing. And I think we've all viewed Rob as a guy that has the tools to be an above average point guard in the Big Ten, but just needs to have a more consistent mentality, a more consistent confidence in himself. So that's where this narrative is coming from. And I think it's also coming from, we've now had 3 seasons to see Rob in this role as primary distributor and kind of your number 1 perimeter defender. And the number 1 perimeter defender part, for the most part, he's done a pretty good job of. Number 1 ball handler, number 1 distributor, he's really struggled with. He's been really up and down with. Well, with Xavier Johnson Xavier Johnson's now going to be that guy. And hopefully Christian Lander is 1B to Xavier Johnson's 1A. And that allows Rob Finney, I think, to settle into a role that maybe is more conducive to him building confidence and being more productive on offense, which is kind of a secondary creator who can focus on playing defense and knocking down open shots, And so, and maybe being able to attack some more closeouts and do some different things as opposed to maybe running as many pick and rolls and having to, lead in transition and do some of those things that he struggled with. So I think you kind of add all of that up, kind of mix it into the stew. And that's where I think people are kind of having some confidence. That's where my confidence is coming from with him. It's a lot of ifs and buts and question marks that have to be answered. I think the most likely scenario is that what we see from Rob as a senior is mostly what we saw from him as a freshman, sophomore, and junior, because that's usually what happens. But I think there is a narrative that you can grasp onto that he could have a bit of a senior year renaissance in this new system, on this new roster, because I think it should be more conducive to what he's shown us he can kind of do most consistently. So that's what I'm hoping for. So what was the word? Delusional? Yeah. Brian, are you delusional? Yes, you are delusional. Just like I'm delusional, just like we're all delusional, but it would not be any fun being a fan if we weren't delusional. So hold on to your delusions, because your delusion is about pumping up a guy who's in his 4th year, who deserves every bit of our respect and admiration and cheering and hoping that he can, kind of fulfill the promise that we've seen. So let's all be delusional together, hop aboard the Rob Finney senior year fan club bandwagon, and let's go. It's going to happen one of these years.
Yeah, I think, for me, the first thing that came to mind when I saw this question was the comments that Fife had made about him. And I think to a certain extent, talked about at the time, Fife may see a little bit of himself there, and listening to the Hoosier Hysterics interview with Fife, I forget whether it was part, 1, 2, or 6, whatever it was when I talked to him, but just talking about his crisis of confidence that he had in terms of shooting and some of those things. And I think Brian brings this up in the question a little bit of just seeing Rob's confidence deteriorate. So I do think you like to see Finney feeling like he has an advocate for him in terms of a guy like Fife who knows what he's been through and the pressure and some of those kinds of things. So I think if you look at it that way, and I view it a little bit to tie this in with the last question in terms of who's going to be here next year. Rob would potentially get that other year. If this is a year that the staff and he is able to kind of get things back on track, he's a guy that you'd love to see stick around for a fifth year if he can really, build and kind of get some of that confidence back, build into that year. And I think the amount of, while his playing time may drop off, I think given all the newcomers, that seems likely. I think he might be able to settle into a role that he can flourish in. At least that's kind of what you hope to see. Ryan, thoughts on Rob and what reasonable expectations are for him heading into this season?
First of all, Jared's doing it again, and it's sad to see. It's old habits die. No, I'm just kidding, Jared. What I would say,
I'm going to be myself, Ryan.
Well, you haven't been on for so long. I don't know what you like anymore. I'd forgotten. No, I would say about Rob, I think one of the things that's going to work to his benefit is the lack of pressure on him because more is expected of other people. And so really if I told you today that Xavier Johnson and Christian Lander played the majority of the point guard minutes or the lead guard minutes, and Rob just kind of fell into the background, everybody would be like, well, okay, because that probably means that Johnson and Lander did really well, developed and turned into something really good. That puts Rob in a place where there's no pressure on him to be good. If he just is who he is, he can finish out his final year, transfer, or just move on with his life, whatever he wants to do. That puts him in a place where anything you get from him beyond what he's been before is a huge bonus to this team. And so it puts him in a position to have a chip on his shoulder and surprise people, and also to work really hard and focus on maybe doing less and focus on a few things, like maybe just developing his shot and not working on driving, maybe be a defensive specialist, maybe be this, maybe be that, and not have to be the all everything point guard that he's had to be for this team over the last 3 years. I think it puts him in a position to succeed. Whereas I think a lot of people would say that all those new guys coming in just adds pressure on him. I think it doesn't, because of the position he's been in so long. You're the point guard at Indiana. There's a lot that comes with that. And now he doesn't have to worry about that. Yeah, if he winds up being the starter and taking the lion's share of the minutes and playing as much as he has the last few years, great. But if he doesn't, there's other guys there to help out. In the past, it's been, if he doesn't do it, there's nobody behind him to help out. And it also means that if he has up and down games, there's guys who can take those minutes and fill in. So again, there's just not the level of pressure there has been before.
Here's the one thing that I will say. I agree with you. I think there's a lot less pressure on Rob, especially offensively, because of what Xavier Johnson brings, because now of the shooting that you're going to have with Parker Stewart and Tamar Bates and some of these other guys. But Rob is going to be extremely important. If this Indiana team is going to reach its ceiling, which I think a lot of us think if they reach their ceiling, they're a top 3 or 4 team in the Big Ten. They're a top 15, 20 team in the country. I'm not predicting that, but if they reach their ceiling, that's what they are. And I think Rob plays a very important role there because his defense is going to be extremely important. Xavier Johnson has a lot of defensive tools, but he's a gambler and not a very disciplined defender. We don't really know what Parker Stewart is as a defender. Tamar Bates is a freshman who's not going to be that physical. Christian Lander is a developing defender at best. All of these guys have things they do well. Playing good, solid, disciplined defense, not one of them. Rob is the guy who brings that. And so I think for this to not just be kind of an all-offense perimeter, you need Rob to be a guy who's there as your defensive anchor, who can also step up and knock down 35 to 40% of his threes. If he can do that, kind of be your 3-and-D guy as a perimeter player, almost play the role that OG Anunoby played on the 2016 team, but as a guard, that's where this team kind of is unlocked. If he doesn't, and if you can't play him offensively, and now you don't have his defense out there, there's going to be a team that's very explosive, but is going to give up a lot of points too. So that's where I think he's really, really important. Not just a luxury, but I think if this team's going to be its ideal self, you want him playing 22 to 25 minutes because he's going to be the best defender out on the perimeter.
All right. Next question from Kathy. And there's probably 3 guys who can't answer this question, but we are not afraid to ask it anyway. Can someone help us understand the difference in roles and responsibilities between Thad Matta and Armand Hill? So Thad Matta's official title, Associate AD for men's basketball. Armand Hill, Director of Basketball Administration. who wants to take a crack at understanding
idea.
what these things are?
No, what it looks like to me is that Thad Matta is more of an overview of the program kind of guy, and it seems like this new hire would be more in the weeds on specific tasks as opposed to sort of being the czar in charge of Indiana basketball. The director of basketball administration, I'd assume that has a lot to do with recruiting coordination, transfer portal coordination, which has become huge now, that almost needs its own guy. Maybe, travel, figuring out schedules, figuring out, what I mean by travel is figuring out so you're not playing 3 teams on the road in a row outside of the Big Ten, or things like that.
But do you think this guy's going to do that? His experience is in the NBA, so I would think he's more probably. I would think he's going to be above somebody who does things like that, and specifically. And yes, I think that also he'll deal with. I'm sure he'll be on court practicing and things like that. That's what the title says to me. I don't know what he'll actually be doing. I mean, they give people titles that don't have. I mean, I remember one time there was in college football. There was a guy, I forget what team it was, but their offensive running game coordinator was their secondary coach. It's the titles don't really mean anything. It's a way to pay guys at a certain level. So I don't know specifically.
Was that at USC? Did they totally botch that and just have guys that didn't know what they were doing?
It might have been USC, given the way the football program has been run the last couple of years. But no, I've seen that a couple of places where a defensive guy is like the passing game coordinator, and it's like, guys. But it's just a way to add a title to give a guy extra money. So the titles at these levels don't necessarily directly correlate with what they're doing. So I don't know exactly what he'll be doing, but my guess is by the title, it'll be some of that stuff.
Yeah,
Jared, what's your speculation on this?
Well,
we have no idea.
They're doing.
No, but I think we can pretty safely say this. Thad Matta is working really closely with Scott Dolson. He's the associate athletic director for men's basketball. So he's working really closely with Scott Dolson. I don't know. I haven't heard recently, is Thad Matta even moving to Bloomington, or is he going to stay in Indianapolis? How much is he going to be there on a day-to-day? I don't know. Armand.
You should watch our show from last week with a guy. His name's
yeah. Well, I got a lot of
Mark Titus. Yeah, he was really good talking about that.
Yeah. Well, and so Armand Hill, I think he's going to be reporting directly to Mike Woodson. This is Mike Woodson's guy, right? And so I think. Do we know what they're going to do? No, but I think we do have a pretty good idea that Thad Matta is going to be very involved in recruiting, and I think very involved in helping Mike Woodson create the scaffolding for a basketball program that you need, because Mike Woodson hasn't been through Big Ten season and some of that stuff. Kind of help him get through that and what that structure needs to look like. Armand Hill, he's been a college basketball coach. He had 8 years, I think, at Columbia. But he spent a lot of time in the NBA. So what are the skills he brings to the table? I can't imagine he's going to jump right in and be doing a ton of administrative stuff, like planning schedules and stuff like that. Maybe he'll do some of it, but I would have to think that he's going to be there with Mike Woodson, helping him put a system in, build relationships with players, do some, probably the transfer portal type stuff. I could see him doing some of that.
I also think it's going to be a lot of high level designing of offense and analysis of the offense and the defense and things like that as well, from a scouting perspective, from a, reviewing tape of the team and helping, I think that sometimes coaches need another set of eyes on that video and film and all that. And I think that he's probably going to be involved in that as well.
And helping to reinforce this new culture of Indiana basketball, which is one of really focusing on helping prepare guys to get to the next level. And this is another coach who's been there, can do that. So, so I think all that stuff, on a day-to-day, who knows, that it'll probably ebb and flow and evolve. But I think what we traced is probably a pretty good outline of what it'll look like.
All right, last one. Elbows in. At what part during the offseason would you expect the coaching staff to know if this team is good? And which coach do you think will be the first to know? Brand new coach with college experience, NBA coach with no college experience, or the returning coach. So, Ryan, Jared, I'll throw this one to you first. When do you think they know, and who figures out first whether this team's going to be any good or not?
Gosh, at what point during the offseason would you expect the coaching staff to know if this team is good?
Yes.
I would say, look, I think you're going to learn a lot from the trip because you have 10 practices. You're going to actually play a couple of games. So I think you're going to get some sense, but I don't even know that I would say that. I think when you'll really know if this team is good is once they come back for the start of regular practice, and how much farther are they ahead than where they started, for right now, or when those 10 practices start for the Bahamas. How much did that time, the camaraderie they built, the understanding of the system, how much did that grow to now when you're actually starting to prep for the season? And I would think those first few practices of when you're starting to prep for the season, I would think that's when you'd start to really get an understanding, because now the guys have built some chemistry. They kind of understand things. And, whereas you may see, those first 10 practices are probably going to be all up and down. Do you start to see the guys make some quantum leaps in terms of their ability to play together once they've had that entire experience? So that's what I would be looking toward. And I guess, if I had to pick one coach, I would probably say it would be either Kenya or Dane Fife, because they've been around the college game the longest. They've both been through the Big Ten. I think they would have the best idea of what are the earmarks of a team that has a chance to win some games in November and December, but also be good in February. I would probably trust their opinions the most on that.
Ryan, what about you?
I'd say Fife and Hunter are because they know college basketball. I agree with Jared on the timeline. I think if you're talking off season, like before the season tips off, it's going to be right before the season tips off, because again, there's so many new pieces. It's going to be hard to know how good you'll be until you see them kind of working together extensively on the court. I think the Bahamas trip will be an indication, but I also think that, when you start up practices in the fall, you'll see like, oh, somebody learned to shoot, and somebody learned how to do this, and somebody looks like they, you'll start to kind of figure it out. Like Miller Kopp is definitely the guy from 2019, not 2020. I think that you'll start to sort of put those pieces together, and it'll be as close to the season as possible. I think because teams can transform over the summer, and when guys get back in there and start practicing again, I think they'll have a good idea.
Yeah, I don't necessarily have additional thoughts on the timing in terms of who. I'll throw Woodson in there, one, because he's the head coach, but two, and perhaps more importantly, he knows what system he's trying to run, and if that's different than things that Hunter and Fife have spent a bunch of time around, he may have a better gauge on how quickly they're picking it up, how well that, what he's doing is translating, and if they're, things are kind of on the progression that he wants to see. But could see that one either way. But yeah, timing wise, I think that'll be difficult. I think this trip to the Bahamas will give some indication by the time you get to the end of that trip, by the time you've gotten those practices in those couple games. But there's also a long time between when that ends and when the season really starts, that a lot of other things can happen at that point, just through practices, other guys, earning more minutes and based on how they play. So that part will be interesting. That'll give us at least a glimpse, but we'll kind of see after that. All right. Coming up in our last segment, we'll do some subscriber shout outs and then answer your non-basketball questions, plus the mediocre question of the week from Jay Horry. Stick around with us for that here on the Assembly Call. All right.
We got some Miller Kopp love in the chat here. Will Miller Kopp be the second leading scorer? Not that it matters, just curious. Who do you guys think is going to be?
I think he could be third. I think he could be third.
I think Xavier Johnson will be second.
Yeah, Xavier Johnson can have the ball a lot. Yeah, that was what I was going to say. If he can get to the free throw line, knock down free throws, be huge. That's the other thing this team has to do. I know we talk about 3-point shooting and everything. I know that falls under the shooting, but they're two different skills, I think. And free throw shooting has got to be moving forward. There's no excuse for Indiana not being able to shoot free throws.
I think fans at this point, if those are two different skills, I think fans are willing to settle for one out of two.
That's fair, and it'd probably be 3-point shooting, quite frankly. But I do think those are two different skills because, 3-pointers are in the flow of everything, and free throws, you got to stand and think about them. And I think that 90% of it is mental and repetitions. Those are the only.
It's hard too when being a bad free throw shooting team just became part of our program's identity.
Yep.
And it's hard to shake, So now with a fresh start, hopefully we can change that. Woodson's coming from the NBA where, teams shoot like 75% from the free throw line, So yeah.
You guys can go ahead and start the next segment. I need to be right back. I need to grab Madeline for something. Take 2 seconds. I need to ask her something.
Here I come, Madeline.
Easy,
Basically. All right. Be right back.
All right. Yeah. You might want to. Oh, there you go. I was like, he might want to
maybe turn the mic off.
He took care of it eventually.
Okay. I was gonna say we'll get some drops. He's not gonna want played again.
That's entirely possible. All right.
That is possible. All right, we can start.
Well, we might as well get going. All right. Here we go.
This is Jordan Halls, and I never miss a shot or an episode of the Assembly Call.
All right, welcome back to the Assembly Call. Andy Bottoms here with Ryan Phillips and Jared Morris, and it's segment 3, which can only mean that it's time for
Subscriber shout out.
All right, Jared, do you want to take the subscriber shout out, or do you want me to?
Sure, I can do this one.
I'm happy to. I'm happy to if you want, but
no, this one is pretty epic. Actually, this is from Howie, who lives in Los Angeles, and Howie really goes to town with his answer about who his Assembly Call leader is. So we'll get to that in a second, but we'll start with his favorite player. So Howie wrote for his favorite player, "Boy, do I love a good guard. Yogi's, quote, organized chaos probably makes him my favorite. I loved Jordy's shooting, though. That quick release always got me out of my seat. Finally, AJ Moye played with such infectious emotion. Hard to leave him off the list." So Yogi Ferrell, Jordan Hulls, and AJ Moye. Tough to argue with any of those three guys. 3 fan favorites there. Now, for his Assembly Call leader, Howie said, "I love all of the main 4. Okay. Now here we go, because he describes this. He says, "I would probably say you, Jared, are my favorite, as you are such a great host. The pacing of the show is never better than when you are at the controls. We also tend to see things the same way. Most recent example being, I do think that the, quote, IU fans are impatient, unquote, take is lazy. The majority of IU fans have been pretty patient, all things considered. Do we think that Duke, UNC, Kentucky fans would be tolerant of not making the tournament multiple years in a row, let alone 5? It is also about trajectory. If Archie had made another incremental step forward this year and had a couple of recruits lined up that made sense, I think the majority of fans would have continued to be patient. I'm still baffled by the roster decisions. The fact that he did not bring in any additional shooters last offseason. Also, I think people forget Lander was not a slam dunk to be on the roster until mid to late summer. If he had been, who was going to be the secondary ball handler behind Rob? Al? Trey? So quite a rant there that Howie went into, which is awesome. He goes on to say, Ryan's rant makes me feel better when we play bad. Appreciate his honesty without making it personal, and love his walk-up music. I have to give Coach the Hustle Award because of just how much he has grown as a host over the last year. I could tell early on that he was really nervous doing it, and it made me a little nervous listening, but he now seems like he really has the hang of it, and I'm just happy to listen when he is at the helm, when you or Andy aren't." Subtle dig at Ryan.
Yeah, he's another Ryan should never host guy. I like this guy.
That's not Ryan should never host. He's just accepted that it's never going to happen.
I'm on Team Howie right now.
And then he says, Andy brings a sense of calm that really rounds out the group. So that was awesome, Howie. And I love just the impromptu rant that he went into there in the middle. And for his special acknowledgement, Howie wrote, I would love to call out my wife, Robin, who has not only learned the names of the IU players, but will even watch the game from time to time. Also, after the game, regardless of the outcome, she knows that I need to go listen to the assembly call to be among friends.
Next level, Howie, is she learns the names of all the hosts of the show you watch after the game. That's where you kind of take it to the next, rung on that ladder.
And then you learn the chat mob members.
There you go. It's a process. It's a process. She'll get there.
Yep. So that was awesome, Howie. We'll make that our only subscriber shout out because I think that one deserves to stand on its own. No need to try to have someone compete with that. So thank you, Howie. We appreciate it. And we very much enjoy being the friends that you hang out with after the games. That's why we're here. So thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Well, now we'll hit the rest of the mailbag. All questions, again, submitted via our private IU basketball discussion community, which you can learn more about and join at assemblycall.com/community. First up.
It's not that good, but it's not that bad. It's Jay's mediocre question.
right. So this week's question: you are named Emperor of Indiana University Athletics, a position that comes with unchecked power of all things IU sports and an unlimited budget. What is the first thing you do? Jay said he would start, although this could have easily been Ryan just writing this in, but he said, I'll start. I'm building a new basketball arena. So, Ryan, I'll throw this to you first so that you can just piggyback off of what Jay provided, because I have a feeling that's the direction that you would go.
Mediocre question, but a fantastic answer. Yes, I'm building a new state-of-the-art arena, one that has the ability to be adjusted over time, built in for the fact that, in 20 years, you may need to rejigger some things around and do some different things with it that's fully adaptable for the future. Something that Assembly Hall, at times, it's been very difficult to make those changes because of the way it's built and the construction of it. But yes, I would start building a new arena. I think 50 years is enough. We're coming up on 50 for Assembly Hall, and by the time the new one would be built, it'd probably be almost there. I am, 100% building a new arena at Indiana. Indiana deserves that. I think Indiana, you look around the country at the places that have built new arenas, they're amazing. And I think Indiana, it's come to the time where I know they just gave it a facelift, but it's still the same old arena. The memories there will never be taken away. And people say that, oh, it's just so loud in there. How would you give it up? It's loud in there because of the fans. It's loud in there because of the crowd and because of the personality and attitude of the fans. And that will happen wherever they go. And you can also build a new arena specifically with great acoustics. I mean, you can do that. And I just think the problem with Assembly Hall is the balcony. And I feel like there's maybe, 5 rows of good seats in the balcony, and it's a huge thing. And if you're automatically cutting that many people out, you're seeing fewer and fewer students go when they have balcony seats. It's a problem that needs to be addressed, and there needs to be a new arena with better seats.
All right, so Jared, try to look past your potential disagreement with Ryan's point. What would you do as your first act as Emperor of IU Athletics?
I do still disagree with that point, but I'm begrudgingly coming around on it a little bit, I have to admit. There have been some compelling arguments made about it. It's tough for me to separate being a kid going to Assembly Hall and thinking about that being different. But as time goes on, the arguments start to be more compelling to me. My first instinct for this was put a statue of Bob Knight outside Assembly Hall. I think at some point that should happen. But if we're talking about all of IU athletics, and you're naming me the Emperor of Indiana University Athletics, I actually think the first thing I would do is set up a meeting with Tom Allen and make sure he has everything he needs. And the reason I say that is because opportunities to really double down on IU football have been few and far between in the history of our school. And we've really got it now. And it kind of feels like we did just double down on it. We gave Tom Allen a lot of money. We've given him a lot of the things that he needs. I would go to him again and say, what else do you need? Because I think we've really got a chance here to do something special with football. And I think that boat rising raises all of the other boats. That doesn't mean that you forget about all of the other programs. I think Indiana basketball is still the flagship sport and still needs a lot of help. But I think we are in a really unique time for football right now, and we should do everything possible to maximize it. So that's the first thing I would do, is go to him and see if there's anything else we can do for him that would help him make Indiana football even better and build something that's going to last even longer.
Yeah, it's funny because I think those are in some ways the first, at least some variation of those, the first two things that I thought of. I think from a basketball arena perspective, I think you have to ask yourself, if you think that it shouldn't be brand new, what does all that money really allow you to do to the current setup, and does it solve the issues that you feel like are there? And I think eventually it's kind of the unchecked budget piece of this that says, even if you had no budget, what would you really, how much can you do based on the footprint of where Assembly Hall is and different things like that. And then, Jared, to your point, I thought a little bit of the Tom Allen of, what else do you give him to be able to sustain that momentum? I will say Richie had a good one in the chat. He said, build an actual Hall of Fame building for
That'd be
IU
awesome.
athletics. Something that really, Cook Hall does some of that, where you can get in and see some of the history of the basketball program. But I think some things that would really provide, additional history of the sports. Ryan is raising his hand now, apparently,
Yes.
which is, I
Well,
suppose, better than interrupting, but this is
Yes.
a little bit unsettling, but all right, go ahead.
What I would say is in the new basketball arena, you could have a huge Hall of Fame attached to it. You can do those things. And a lot of places have done that kind of stuff. I mean, look, Memorial Stadium, they didn't tear down, but it's essentially a brand new stadium. They have at what they've added to it and what they've redone with that stadium. They've essentially given the football team a brand new stadium with a massive weight room and all the things you need. And of course, you need to constantly be updating that, because the second you build something, your rival is building something better the next day. And so that's just the arms race in college sports these days. But, here's the other thing about that arena that I would say is when kids walk into it, yeah, it has the banners. And it has some, this is Assembly Hall feel, but the facilities are not that great, and they haven't been for a long time. And you can only do so much with a facelift on it. And so they're going to other arenas that are built in a way that they can be almost completely gutted and rebuilt, and going to those places with better locker rooms, better this, better that, better whatever, constantly. And so I do think that eventually we've got to come to this point. It's going to happen now or in 10 years or 12 years. They're not just going to keep giving Assembly Hall facelifts. Eventually they're going to replace it. It's not going to be the barn. It's just not where you have it for 100 years. And so at some point they do need to consider that. And they talked about it like 15 years ago. They got approval to build a new one, and then they just went away.
Yeah. All right. We've got a few other ideas in the chat. Build a better indoor practice facility. Additional stands in the outfield of Bart Kaufman. Let's see.
I love the
Yeagley
idea
statue.
of a full IU Sports Hall of Fame, by the way. I think that's a great idea,
Yeah,
because there's so much great
cool
history. And let Chris Williams be the curator. IU artists.
100%.
Absolutely. All right. Speaking of the great Chris Williams IU artifacts, his question is up next.
Segue.
That was well done. Well done. That's why Howie said that things move better when you were the host, because the segue is like that. What is one thing you would have done differently during your collegiate years in Bloomington? Jared.
That's how we request to talk on the show now, right?
Apparently we do. Yeah.
I'm trying to be nice over here, and these guys are
which is great if I had another screen, and I didn't have to pull up the question.
You were the kid in
I wasn't
elementary
looking
school.
at you when I did whatever.
Brian, you were the kid in elementary school, weren't you? That's like you couldn't like sit in your chair when you had something to say.
No,
You're, like, standing up, raising your hand.
No, I absolutely was the kid who didn't. I have changed over the years, Jared. I have changed dramatically over the years.
Okay, what is one thing you would have done differently during your collegiate years in Bloomington? 100% without a doubt, I would have studied abroad. It was the thing I regretted almost immediately upon graduating. And I was like, why did I not do this? There was always like some reason to not do it. And looking back, the reason was always not as important as 18 or 19 or 20-year-old Jared thought it was. I would have studied abroad. It would have been a great experience. That one's easy for me. I wish I'd done it.
Ryan, what about you?
I don't know. That's a tough one. I probably would have utilized the resources at IU more, like for internship programs and things like that. I wish that the program I went to was run by Galen at the time, the sports media program. It didn't exist, but I would have utilized all the things that are available to you. Also, I definitely should have gone out. I mean, I went out a lot. I definitely should have gone out more because I miss it now. When I miss Knicks, I miss getting to go out. That also bleeds over to when I lived there as well for the years after I graduated. I should have taken more advantage of the fact that the nightlife in Bloomington is awesome. I mean, I did go out a lot. I went out 2-3 nights a week, but I mean, I was doing fine in school. I could have done more.
Yeah, I mean, one of my first thoughts was never left, but that seems unrealistic. Yeah, I think a little bit of what Ryan said for me, probably going out a little bit more instead of maybe a little bit less studying, a little more of that. I probably would also have, whether it was the sports media, which I know wasn't the same thing then. I majored in math. I didn't ever really know what I wanted to do with it. In retrospect, probably would have gone a different direction of study, which I should have figured out pretty early on when my advisor told me how many more semesters of calculus I had to take, and I about fell out of my chair. So that should have been my first red flag. But what are you gonna do?
You should have done a self-study and just created a bracketology major. I don't know
Seriously.
what exactly classes you would have put together for that.
I'd love him to build a bracketology major and somebody be like, so what are you going to do with that?
No idea. Anyway. All right. Next from Josiah, Andy, Ryan, and Jared. What is your favorite TV show, movie, or novel released within the last 10 years?
Oh God.
Gosh, that's hard.
That is hard. Released within the last 10 years?
Approximately, he said. So give yourself some freedom if you need it.
I'll go off the board. Go ahead, Andy. If you're going first, go ahead, please.
I mean, I don't. The only one that came to mind for me was TV show. I love The Office, so I would probably say that of those.
Was that released in the last 10 years? That was
no. He said approximately.
Well, how long has it been since it's been on?
Has
it been that long? Don't make me feel.
Years. Yeah.
Don't make me feel that old.
It's been a while.
I was in school when it came out. That's Madeline's favorite show too, by the way.
Go ahead,
here's an off the board.
I gotta look this up so that I feel super old when I realize when it was released.
So there's some great
depressing.
ones like Breaking Bad, Mad Men, all of those. I'm going off the board with one that a lot of people don't know is *Halt and Catch Fire*. Everybody should watch that. It's one of the best, most underrated dramas of the last decade.
You've recommended that several times.
Yes, watch it. It's weird. It's not a subject. It's about people in computers in the late 70s, early 80s to start. And it's not a subject I was interested in, but I just kind of got caught up watching it because it was on at the same time as or right after some other stuff. And it is phenomenal. 4 seasons. It's on Netflix. Go watch it.
Yeah.
So to circle back, according to Wikipedia, The Office was originally released in 2005, ended in 2013, which I was thinking more of the end, I guess.
Yeah,
it's a great show.
It is a great
Jeff
show.
Marlowe in the chat going with Ted Lasso. That has rapidly approached.
I was going to say Ted Lasso too because that's a great show.
Schitt's Creek is great.
Yeah, I mean the show that I liked the best, enjoyed the most was Breaking Bad for sure. It's kind of an easy one. I would say the other show that I really liked, Heather and I have kind of gotten on this thing where we just kind of want like some nice, easy 30-minute comedies because we don't have too much time to watch shows. Schitt's Creek was phenomenal. We got through the first 4 episodes and we're like, the show is not very good. Like, why does everybody like this show? And then we decided to power through it, and I
told you to.
So
I told you to.
Yeah, I think we had that I think we all had that conversation. Yeah, you just have to power through for a little bit.
Here's the thing: give shows a season. If you start a show, give it a season because guess what? A lot of times they have the idea for the first episode, they get the show bought, and then they're like, "Oh God, we got to write 10 or 13 of these."
Yeah,
and they figure it out. Like Breaking Bad was great off the bat, and it was almost like they didn't expect to get a second season. And the beginning of season 2, Breaking Bad is one of the best shows ever made. The beginning of season 2 is really slow because it was like they had all the ideas and used them all in season 1, and then season 2 they're like, all right, what is this show now? And there are shows like that. You'll see it. And knowing some people who are in Hollywood from growing up out here, they tell you all the time, like, don't get sucked in by a pilot. Or because a pilot's usually really good, and then the next few episodes they're just figuring out what to do. So it sometimes can take a full season, maybe 2, to really figure itself out.
Another show that we started watching kind of randomly that is really weird, but really like strangely entertaining is What We Do in the Shadows.
Oh, that's great! FX. What We Do in the Shadows is hilarious.
Really funny.
Have you seen the movie?
No.
Okay, the movie is what kicked it off. The movie is fantastic, especially if you're liking the show. Watch the movie. Did
Jermaine Clement do the movie too?
Yes, Jermaine Clement and Taika Waititi did the movie, and then they did the TV show.
Okay,
and Taika Waititi's a genius, and so is Jermaine. But
okay.
Yes.
There we go. All right, Jeff Marlowe. It's summertime and basketball is a little slow. Let's ask the panel a baseball-related question. Top 3 baseball movies. His were Bull Durham, Major League, and For Love of the Game.
Those are okay.
Well, he's missing The Sandlot right off the bat.
And The Natural. Come on.
And The Natural. Yeah.
I think that's the point of the question that it's difficult. Yeah.
So Bull Durham kind of turns into a love story at the end. And I love Bull Durham up until that point. And I kind of stopped watching towards the end, like if it's on TV or something. Major League, I love. Major League makes me laugh to this day every time. The Natural is one of my favorite movies ever made. My dad introduced it to me when I was like 5, and I watched it constantly. And I would say, Sandlot's in the mix.
No, Sandlot's not in the mix.
It's
Sandlot
in the mix for me. I love it.
It's in the top. It's in the top 3.
Nobody
you're talking
said
about,
Field of Dreams has not been mentioned. Moneyball. Was thrown out in the
Field of
chat.
Dreams versus Sandlot.
Bad News Bears also mentioned in the chat.
Bad News Bears is a classic.
Yeah.
But
Rookie
Field
of
of
the
Dreams
Year.
versus Sandlot's tough for me.
Coach
You've also
meant
got
Field of Dreams.
42, Moneyball, 61. Those are all good ones.
Moneyball is the recent one I think is great. It's such an underrated movie.
I mean, Little Big League, Rookie of the Year. I mean, lots of great options out there.
Rookie of the Year was a classic when I was a kid.
The DVD box set of the 2005 World Series, also a classic, which I have. So I just want to throw that out there.
Predictable ending. I don't know.
Nice. I think we gave.
If you don't like relief pitching, watch the 2005 World Series because there wasn't much of it.
Yeah,
we missing any?
Scout,
Little Big League. I mean, there's a bunch of them.
8 Men Out. Somebody mentioned.
So I think there's different things. There's like, what is the best movie, and which one do you want to watch the most? Sandlot is the one I would just want to sit down and watch the most. But there's probably others that are like quote unquote better baseball movies.
Yeah, the
Sandlot just reminds me of childhood. It's got so many lines in it that you remember. You know,
you could almost say that's not really a baseball movie, and it's more of like a coming of age kind of movie. You know what I mean? Like
Ryan trying to just
it's a baseball movie.
I'm just saying
the whole movie's about baseball.
It's about baseball. It's about kids. That's the main thing. It's about friends and kids and being young. I think, like, The Natural is about baseball, and Field of Dreams is about baseball. That's my thing. Field of Dreams is a love letter.
Distinction that you're making here is.
I'm just saying, if you want to get into the weeds on it, I can, but you don't want to. That's not fun.
No, I understand what you're saying, but like every
I'm not saying
movie, every movie that comes out has like a deeper underlying meaning.
I'm playing devil's advocate, Jared. Would you just go with it?
A coming of age. It's the old coach gets a second chance, like in Hoosiers. Like there's personal stories that go through any good movie. But Hoosiers is a basketball movie. Sandlot's a baseball movie. And Wendy Peppercorn is a legend.
There we are. All right. Andrew, what is something outside the box Kevin Warren could do to rebuild trust in his leadership of the Big Ten after the debacles of the last year?
Kick Nebraska out.
I go with resign.
I mean, I'd be willing to send a list of officials that he could ban from doing basketball games.
That would work.
I mean, that would be an option. Ryan,
but what is thoughts? What is something he could do, really? Tough to know. I mean,
the Big Ten tournament.
Joel put in the chat, resign. So
that's what I said. I said 3 times, Joel. Resign. That's what he could do.
Ooh, I like Tyler's realignment.
Yeah,
football realignment of the conference. I mean, that's how he could endear himself to IU fans.
I guess that's the thing. Who's he trying to rebuild trust with?
He needs. Well, clearly it's IU fans,
Ohio State fans, or Indiana fans.
Well, he's already bending over backwards for Ohio State, so I'm not really sure he needs to do that. I think the only people who probably feel wronged by his leadership at this point would potentially be IU fans. So that's where the realignment potentially comes in.
Yeah.
All right. Phil.
Yeah,
Tracy
Joel has
Smith.
a good one. Push NIL. Yeah, do some of those things. Do something.
Yeah,
I guess I would say do something forward thinking. Do something that's outside
of the Big
Ten,
box. Jared. That's not happening.
Well, I know, but if you want people to stand up and say, "Oh, okay, like this is a guy with a plan. This is a guy who's thinking about something here."
Oh, how about going back to 18 Big Ten games? So you're not playing Big Ten games in early January.
I would be totally fine with that.
Yeah, cut it back to 16. Who cares? Like, you know what I mean? Like, New Year, that's when you play the Big Ten games.
Mm-hmm.
The way it always was. Nobody was complaining. Nobody was complaining.
People were complaining because of the unbalanced schedule. So it helps make it less
still unbalanced, though. It's still unbalanced.
It is, but less so. But yeah,
fine. Make it 18, but and play them the last week of December, but not early January. Like, it makes no sense. There are too many. And the thing is, the Big Ten eats itself every year. It does, because they play too many games against each other, I think.
All right, from Phil. Tracy Smith was fired in Arizona, which I did not know until I read this question.
Arizona State, by the way.
Well, I'm just reading what's in here.
He did say in Arizona, so
it was still the state. So, not at Arizona. Would Mercer bring him back as an assistant coach?
I doubt it. He'll probably get a head coaching job somewhere.
I would assume so. That he,
there are people there.
It's probably not an option. I don't know that you wouldn't bring him back. I think he's a guy that would have fond memories of his time at IU, and I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I saw they put an oral history out about the getting to the College World Series in 2013. So certainly fond memories. I think if they had the opportunity, they would. But I don't know that it's actually an option necessarily.
You'd have to be really secure. You have to be really secure in your job as a head coach to bring back a previously successful head coach.
Yeah.
I guess. So, maybe after this year, maybe you wouldn't. Maybe if this question was asked last offseason, maybe it's a different story. I don't know if the way the season played out this year would have any bearing on that level of security that you talk about. But
yeah, I think Tracy Sims is going to get another job. So I think it's kind of a moot point. But also, you're right. I mean, it's bringing a former head coach while you're, the head coach is always tough, especially if he's been a head coach at your school. But there's a lot of people at Arizona State who are upset that he got fired because they didn't think he was doing that bad a job. So I think he's going to get another job. He's a very well respected, well thought of coach, and he can really recruit.
All right, Jonathan, if you could secure funds from the community, who on the current rosters of the men's and women's basketball and football team would you choose to help endorse the assembly call?
It's a great question.
I think on the women's side, I would probably say Grace Berger.
Yes, 100%.
Or Mackenzie Holmes. I think her, from a personality standpoint, like they did something before last year where they had her mic'd up. She seems like she would have fun with whatever it was that you were doing. But those would be the two that would jump out from the women's team. Football, anybody? Taiwan Mullen is the first one that came to mind.
Oh, Taiwan Mullen for sure.
That's easily, I think that one's pretty obvious. I think
Taiwan Mullen or future Heisman Trophy winner Michael Penix. One of the
two. But you don't want Mike to get injured while you're having him record something. So it's
why would you say that?
It's true.
Why would you even go there? Or maybe the guy who decided to transfer from USC because he wanted to play for a real football program.
You mean the guy who was like 6th on the running back depth chart?
I don't care.
Yeah. I wish Stephen Carr luck.
And he transferred to Indiana.
I hope Stephen Carr is healthy this year and does great for Indiana. He had a lot of injuries at USC and kind of got buried on the depth chart. He's a good kid. I hope he does very, very well at Indiana. It would make me very happy both ways. For basketball,
I mean, Trace is the obvious answer because he's the most high-profile guy. But I think I would go with Tamar Bates.
Yeah,
play the long game.
Tamar.
I think I'd go with Tamar Bates because he's got a great personality. He's probably going to be here for a few years. I think I'd roll with Tamar.
I agree. That would be my pick. Him or Trace, one of the two.
Yeah.
All right. And
Trace is going to be too busy working on that right hand and a jump shot to do it. So we'll take it.
Yeah. Once he's done doing yoga.
By the way, somebody put in the chat, it was Joel put in the chat, Lily King would be the best person. I agree with you, Joel. Best personality. The swimmer, Lily King, to endorse us.
We already have Lily King.
I know, but I'm saying if she was going to do a hardcore campaign for us.
Oh, well, yeah, okay. Yeah, Lily King is a legend.
Yeah. Legend. Also, that was not within the parameter of the question, but
I know. I'm saying if it was any athlete.
I love Andy's commitment to the script here.
This is
we're making this up.
Except with the office. What is the office answer? So for Andy, sometimes the parameters matter, sometimes they don't.
The end of the series was within the parameters that were given.
But the end of the series wasn't as good. Like you need the middle seasons is what really hooked you. So
that's fair. Anyway, all right, Glenn, in an assembly call, host
is The Office a show about business, Ryan? What do you think?
No, it's not. It's a love story disguised as a comedy. That's what The Office is.
All right,
telling you, I can do this all day. Ask me any show.
Please, I have no intention of doing that. In an assembly call, host one-on-one basketball tournament with the first 2 rounds being Andy versus Coach and Ryan versus Jared. Who wins the tournament?
Me.
Oh boy.
I'm the
trash talk in that Ryan Jared game would be very
unbelievable.
You would have to mic it up.
The earth might swallow the two of us. She's like, shut up.
Very well, Mike.
I think I win. I'm the tallest. I got the longest reach. I think I just back everybody down.
No.
And
I'm scrappy
quick.
and I'm the best shooter.
Oh, I don't know about that.
I do. See, the best shooter would know.
So
I'm just saying, the best shooter would know.
Boy.
Now, who wins the Andy Coach matchup?
Coach Marlowe on record with Jared over Ryan, Coach over Andy, Coach over Jared in the final.
Wow. Okay.
But
he's got confidence in Coach's game.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I've never seen Coach play. I would I can't really speak to what his game is like. Who knows? But
Ryan says, is Gene Steratore the ref, or do you call your own fouls? I think that'd be great to have Gene Steratore ref a one-on-one game between me and Ryan. That'd be phenomenal.
Yeah. I honestly have no idea. It probably would not be me. Because I think I'm the shortest of all three of us. So
I would need to get in
for
shape
sure the shortest of all.
Yeah,
of us.
same.
I would need a little bit of time to get in shape, so I don't.
Well, then I might be able to win now.
Die while playing. But give me a month. I'll be ready.
Yeah,
Coach says,
what
put
are
a
we
sandwich at the
playing
rim,
to?
and I am
What are we-
unbeatable.
What are we playing to? Might be the real question. If it's a game of endurance, it sounds like you guys.
It's
got to
be. It's got to be.
You guys going to be a little trouble.
11 by 1s and 2s.
I'm in shape, like health wise. I just am not in basketball playing shape right now. It's been a long time. I mean, courts have been closed for a long time.
I know. But there were a couple other questions that came
Chris
in. By
asks,
the way,
who wins on the golf course? I would
God.
definitely eliminate maybe
I haven't played in a
it would-
decade, so
Yeah.
There's almost I think that would be a debacle. I would say
it'd be fun. That would be hilarious if we were all bad.
I would say
it
the
would be pretty
breweries
hilarious.
providing the beer win in the golf
Yes.
situation. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe
that could be an
Coach can
entertaining
play,
day on
but
the
I'm-
golf course.
Yeah. Well, all right. Yeah, you said there's a couple other questions.
Yes. Valerie says, what kind of cereal did Ryan have today?
Did not have cereal this morning. I
Oh.
did not eat until lunch.
Very
We're
nice.
doing we're on a honey nut Cheerios kick in this house right now, though. It's
Classic.
yeah,
I think I have a drop of you talking about Honey Nut Cheerios.
they're great. Very versatile cereal.
Yeah,
Honey nut Cheerios.
I do.
Frosted mini wheats are always good. I enjoy
They're
good
good.
Rice Krispies. Frosted mini wheats, regular Cheerios, Frosted Flakes,
We got.
all good stuff.
Valerie says, any suggestions on how to decorate a neck brace a la IU? I have to wear this thing until the 25th, or let's say I hope I'm released from this instrument of torture by then. How to decorate a neck brace? Autographs would be one way.
Yeah,
You could
A nice-
candy stripe it.
a nice
Ryan,
shawl.
You're really into crafting. You probably got some good answers.
Yeah.
For this.
Bedazzle it like with an IU right under the chin, so everybody's looking at it.
Yeah.
You could get old ticket stubs from IU Artifacts and make like a ticket stub collage.
Mm.
That would be cool.
Coach suggested putting pictures of himself on it. So that would be
You could write, you could make it like the chain needs one sign and say like Valerie needs one on it. Just for fun.
Somebody suggested in the chat, by the way, not to step on this question that I know you're both enjoying. Somebody suggested doing an assembly called golf outing when we're there, and if we're doing it for charity, I'm there 100%. If we raise
Miniature or
proceeds-
regular golf?
regular. Let's just say we have a lot of fans who like golf.
We do.
We could go last, so we're not holding them all.
We have a lot of
up.
fans who like seeing us screw up. So
Yeah,
that would be.
we could go dead last. Let everybody else, because they're gonna have to play through anyway. Let's be real, as we're hitting it all over the world. But for charity, I would 100% embarrass myself playing golf for good cause.
I would too. Here's a good question from Chris. Seriously, will IU basketball have a better season than IU football? Great question. Who finishes higher in the final top 25? IU football or IU basketball?
I'm gonna go with basketball. That's gonna be close, though.
I'm going to say football.
I just think the football team doesn't get the respect it deserves. So even if they do have a great season,
I think they do now, though. I think they're almost like not overhyped, but like they're hyped now. You know,
I don't see it.
I don't think they're going to suffer from a lack of respect if they just
The
go out
other
and win
thing,
games.
the other thing is this year, and I think the program's on the way up for sure. But I think that this year they're going to suffer from everybody taking them more seriously. And so they might come down a little bit from the mountain, but they're building something. So, maybe come back down to earth a little this year, still make a bowl and do all that, but not like competing for the Big Ten title. Come back down to earth a little bit and then, take another step forward the year after. That's kind of the way I see it playing out a little bit.
Joel says regarding the golf tournament, you guys don't play, just ride around and putt.
Oh, I would do that 100 times out of 100. Bring beer to different groups, like deliver.
Yeah.
That's probably the scenario that I could be most successful on the golf course is what was just described there. So
I think so much of it comes down to Penix's health, obviously, as so many things do. But this Indiana team has more high-level players than any Indiana team I can remember. Like guys who are in the top 10 at their position nationally. Penix, Freifogel, Tywan Mullen, Micah McFadden. They've got some real guys to build around and a lot of young talent coming in. So, I think both teams are probably going to end up somewhere in like the 18 to 22 range by the end of the season. That's kind of what I think.
That's what I think too, and that's why it's just going to depend.
But I guess that's why it's a good question. He wants us to pick. I would say there are fewer unknowns with football because you have the coach and the system. So if I had to pick, I would pick football. Basketball, it seems like there's a wider variance of potential outcomes.
Again, I agree. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Any others that trickled in after?
I don't think so. All
right. So one might say
that's it. We're done. No more questions.
All right. Well, that will do it for this week's episode of the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live, join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live broadcast of our Assembly Call radio recording. Special thanks to Bob Thompson for producing a lot of music that you hear on the show. And thank you for listening. We'll talk to you again next Thursday or sooner if any news breaks. Until then.
Take it from me, Freddie Mac Swain Jr. Keep your elbows in, your eyes on the rim, and man, go up and dunk the ball. Go Hoosiers.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out.
I like everything about that.
All right.
All right. So now we should really open up the AMA floodgates and take live questions from the chat mob.
I got a couple minutes, because pizza's coming, but let's do it.
Well, if we're gonna do that, then we definitely
gotta play the music.
When the show is over, but there's more to be said. Pour yourself a drink now. Put the kiddies to bed. It's time to cut loose. No more censored remarks. So cozy up, chat mob. It's time for AC After Dark.
Gotta have a little butthole in you. San Diego chicken shit. Here I come, Coach Mike. I think I kissed a lot of girls. I think I might even kiss a lot of guys. I don't know. These are rumors. I don't know what's true and what's not. Turn your butt cheeks on. Assembly Call co-host arrested.
It's awesome seeing you guys, but the real reason I made the push to be here tonight was so I could hear that song live.
Yeah, I've replayed it every day over the past week since the Titus show.
It's amazing. Okay, so throw out if you guys have any questions. Throw them out. Any fun questions? You can make them about anything you want. There was one question that came in. I think I saw. Maybe not. Coach said, "Dan, there's no chasing Mrs. Tonsoni tonight." Well, soon, Coach. Let's see. Patrick wants to know, Andy, why have you ignored my LinkedIn request? You even looked at my profile, Andy.
I usually look at that. I likely will not recognize the names of if it's somebody who watches the show. So I would probably look and see I don't have any other connections in common with this person and then just dismiss it. Because typically if that's the case, it's somebody who wants to sell me something for work. So I will rectify that now, Patrick. My sincerest apologies. Wow. I actually feel like that's the second person that has that has said something to me about not responding to stuff on LinkedIn, which I'm not on all that often anyway. But
I get the email updates and just don't look at them for weeks at a time. So I don't even know why I'm on there.
I mean, Ryan, I can totally see being a LinkedIn snob. Andy?
Yeah.
Andy?
He's so Midwestern.
He's really changed since he became top 25 in the bracket matrix.
Yeah.
He ignores
Well, the worst
LinkedIn
part
profile requests now.
Well, the worst part is I don't even see it on here anymore, which is probably even worse.
You're just gonna have to search all 3,000 Patrick Kents out there.
Absolutely. I will figure it out. You guys talk amongst yourselves while I figure this out.
Let's
He's in
see
Cincinnati.
here.
That'll help you.
What will be IU football season record? 8
8-4.
wins sounds. Yeah, 8 wins sounds about right to me.
8 Windiana.
Will pitchers caught doctoring baseballs be eligible for the Hall of Fame? God, just put
Probably.
everybody in the Hall of Fame. It's a museum. Let their stories be told. I don't like they're in, they're not.
Yes, guys doctoring the ball will be eligible for the
Barry
Hall of
Bonds
Fame.
should be in the Hall of Fame.
I
All
just
those
don't
guys
like
should be
Barry
in the Hall of
Bonds, so I'm going to disagree with you there, but it has nothing to do with steroids. He's just a horrible person.
I mean, yeah. But he was also like the most important baseball player for a decade. He should be in the Hall of Fame.
Well, I will say about 6 years of that decade, he was as juiced as anyone in the history of sports has ever been.
Of course he was. He was also
Did you read
awesome
Game of
before
Shadows?
that.
Did you
No.
read Game of Shadows? You should. You should read that. You would like it.
Yeah.
I mean, you would like the reporting in it. It's interesting.
Yeah, and I get a lot of these guys aren't good guys, and they may have cheated to get there. So I don't like it's not without its negatives.
No, I'm kidding about him not being a good guy.
I don't like that cheaters would get in there, but
I would say, okay, Barry. See, here's the thing about Barry Bonds and why it's different with Bonds is to some of these guys. Barry Bonds took it to a ridiculous level where everybody watching him was like, he's not even a human being anymore. Like he got. I mean, like
he was like he was like what Darryl Strawberry turned into in The Simpsons, the home run bat. I felt like
no, it was
like
Ken Griffey Jr. was the
Ken Griffey Jr.
Yeah. No, it was like he looked like he was built like an offensive lineman. Like, and he was, and his thing, he'd been Ken Griffey Jr. And then he became a football player. I mean, there's certain things like his hat size got bigger and his feet began to grow again. Like he took it to a level that was ridiculous. I would say this, Pete Rose deserves to be in the Hall of Fame before Barry Bonds because Barry Bonds made a mockery of that whole thing. Now, Pete Rose needs to apologize first, which he'll never do, which never going to happen. But Barry Bonds made a joke of the whole thing, whereas everybody else like took them, but like kept it within a certain limit. I mean, some guys didn't. Mark McGwire became enormous. Sammy Sosa became enormous.
And yet people were still fascinated by Barry Bonds. And he sold out stadiums. And he was such an important player. So that's what I mean. Like, I'm just not all about
McGwire
the
and Sosa were
moralizing.
more important.
I don't like all the moralizing when we get to the Hall of Fame.
That's
Put him
fair.
in the museum because it's about the stories.
Somebody said his plaque should be in the men's room above the urinals. At least he'd be in the Hall of Fame. I was like, you know what? That'd be cool if there were plaques in there.
Yeah, you can put the cheaters
Read
in their
something
own
while you're
special
peeing.
wing. Yeah. Anyway,
The special cheaters wing. I like it.
Yeah, and make it the bathroom. That's fine.
I'm good with it.
Let's see here. What else? Does Trace increase his draft stock enough in 1 year with Coach Woodson to get picked in the first round of the NBA draft? No, not the first
I would
round.
say he can get to the high second round.
Yeah, I don't think he can get to the first round. He's got to shoot.
Yeah.
Got to be able to shoot. We got a lot of yes to Pete Rose people in the chat. Big Ten Freshman of the Year predictions. I don't think Tamar Bates will win it, but I think he'll be first team All Big Ten or first team freshman All Big Ten. Michigan State's got a good one.
Michigan has
Max Christie. Michigan's got a few.
Couple highly rated.
The guy from Nebraska might be the safe money because he's probably going to get the most opportunities.
He's gonna put up ridiculous numbers. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay, a lot of guys with Pete Rose. How do you get drops from former players for transitions? So some of those we got on Cameo. We just paid them on Cameo. Other guys I just reached out to on like Twitter DMs and got them from them there. And then others, like, as we start doing interviews, then we'll start getting them that way. Like I got one from Brian Evans, but I haven't used it yet because I haven't hosted in a while.
Yeah, Titus gave us one for free during his show.
Oh, he did another one? Good.
No. The time that he was on with you.
Yeah, he gave us the
we just asked him and he's like, yeah, sure.
Yeah. Let's see. Tomorrow, I think Chris says I think TJD will sneak into one of the last spots for the first round. You guys going to pay Woody on Cameo? So I thought about that when I saw Woodson on there, but I don't want to do that.
I actually just asked that question in our private chat.
Yeah, I don't want to do that because that just seems weird. It just seems
we're
weird.
Covering him and then have him endorsing us.
Yeah, because he may not want to endorse a show that inevitably is going to be critical of something that he does, like when he sits someone with 2 fouls
which is
first half and doesn't
completely fair.
Yeah. Just projecting what we might criticize.
Hypothetically. Hypothetically.
Chris says, why does Quinn Buckner not like Steve Alford?
Why does everybody not like Steve Alford?
There we are.
Richie says, Jared, can you get Damon or Calvert for an interview? Actually, I tried to get Damon once and wasn't able to connect.
Doesn't do a ton of them.
Yeah, he doesn't do a lot of interviews.
I've interviewed him after basketball games when he was coaching at Bedford North Lawrence several times. He was a good guy. You know what was interesting was sitting with him after I was done with the interview about the game and just talking a little bit. Of course, we were talking basketball. It was fun to do that.
It's kind of funny. Today I was listening to the Dallas radio station and they were talking about how so Nikola Jokic won the MVP. And he's like one of the few white guys to win the MVP in the NBA. And the last American-born white guy to win the MVP was Larry Bird.
Yep.
And so they asked something else.
Steve Nash is from America Junior. That's close enough, right?
Yeah, but they started someone asked the question like, wait, no one else has won it since then? And the guy's like, well, who else would have won it since then? And they started like just throwing out like all these random white basketball players, and Damon Bailey was one of the guys that they threw out.
Nope,
really a deep
didn't win
cut.
it.
That guy knows his basketball though.
That's funny.
Let's see. With the added depth, do you
Luka's
think
gonna
some
win
of
one.
TJD's stats drop? Maybe a little, but I don't really think so. I mean, he was 19-9 last year. I think that's perfectly reasonable. We'll probably play at a faster pace, so he'll have more opportunities. We'll probably get more transition buckets. And I think, he's going to have to rebound because that's kind of the one thing that we don't. I was going to say we don't have a ton of it. I mean, you still have Race, and you got Michael Durr. So
Well,
I think Trace's stats will be relatively similar.
Well, here's the thing. His overall numbers might drop a little because the talent around him has gotten better, but his efficiency is going to go through the roof, I think. And quite frankly, that's more important than whatever your raw numbers are. As we said, the guy who's the freshman at Nebraska, whose name I have forgotten now, he's going to put numbers through the roof, but I doubt he's very efficient because he's going to be using every possession.
Yeah.
You'll relearn his name when he's in the transfer portal after he is ready to leave Nebraska. So that'll be fine. You'll have a chance then.
Or the draft.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. If, as IU czar, you could have made one coaching change at any time post-night firing, who would it be for and when?
To go get, you mean?
Jared,
Yeah,
what year
like,
would
who
you
would
have
you
hired?
find? Oh.
Jared, what year would you have hired Tony Bennett? That's really a different way to word
Whenever
this
he's available, you get Tony Bennett.
He
and then
keeps
we're all
saying no,
enjoying the
Jared.
Virginia success that they've had.
Um,
I'm sure everybody would argue, right? Because the offense isn't perfect.
I would have
enough
fought.
to run.
I would have fired
boy.
Jerry DiNardo earlier to hire Coach Hep. That's what I would have done. It was too. We didn't get long enough with Coach Hep. That's what I'll say.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah, there were some games. That was when we still had season tickets. There were some games I would have fired DiNardo in the middle of the game. I feel
He taught the football coaching class at IU. My friend took it. He's like, he came home from class one day. He's like, I know more about football than Jerry DiNardo.
That's not good. Joel wants to know what's on Ryan's pizza.
Extra cheese tonight. Didn't feel like a whole lot of toppings. Yeah. Sometimes go with sausage, sometimes pepperoni,
Oh, wow. Ryan says for me, it would be fire Davis in 2004 and hire Thad Matta.
That's a good one. I would have covered Mata's first year as IU head coach then.
Would there ever have been an opportunity to fire the current coach and get Brad Stevens like early in the Butler tenure?
Maybe, but I think Crean.
He wasn't really as high profile then. Because
Yeah.
you couldn't do it once he got big at Butler because Crean was kind of doing okay.
Yeah. And you had just invested in Crean too, big time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there was
because people always say that they should have gotten him when he was at Butler, and it's like I don't think the timelines ever really worked out for that. I mean, you could have just canned a guy who looked like he was going to be successful at IU. You could have done that, but
yeah. All right. Well, this was fun. Good to be back on here with you, gentlemen. Oh, should IU put names on the back of the jerseys? Yes.
My gut says no right now, but I could always change on that. I like how clean the jerseys look without names. I just like that. I don't know. It's not about a tradition thing with me.
I say no.
Oh, yeah. No, I would prefer that they not do it, but I think they should because I think it matters to the people who are deciding if they're going to come play basketball at Indiana.
Well, here's what I'll say.
I wonder how much some of the NIL stuff like contributes to that, though. Like, I would say in the near term, I guess if you were doing it from the standpoint of who's coming, like maybe you would, but as someone who's probably trying to bridge the gap between being a traditionalist and letting some of that happen, I would say no and say that the NIL maybe presents other opportunities for people to kind of get their name out there by using those images and things like that. But
here's what I'll say about it. I think basketball, it's easier to say no because there's so few players on the team that people learn the numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like USC doesn't have names on their football jerseys. And I get why people would be like, and they never have. And I get why people would be like, you should put them on the football jerseys because there's a lot of guys on the team that use the same number, offense and defense and things like that. So it makes more sense from a football standpoint. Now, USC will never put names on their jerseys. It's a tradition thing going all the way back to the beginning. But Indiana with basketball, it's like people who are watching, you need to know 12 players. Like, their numbers, by game 3. So that's why I think it's not as imperative as people think. But yeah, I mean, in the coming years, that may change. Players may demand it.
What will be the first school that puts Twitter handles on the back of jerseys?
Kentucky. It's my guess. All right, I got to go, folks. This was lovely.
Enjoy the pizza. I always thought Andy would be the first one to have a pizza delivered during a show because Chat Mob
It's
Chad
happened. It's happened
that
before.
fantasy for many years.
I know.
All right, everybody, have a good night.
All right, to circle back to the first question, Patrick, send me resend me something or message me somewhere. I can't find it, and I can't find you because there are many Patrick Kents, and then when I put in Ohio, that did not really help all that much. So,
and then don't try to sell him anything.
Absolutely, I'm telling you, the number of 90%, probably 95% of the stuff I get on there is all somebody. Oh, we'd really like to come and do something for your company and whatever else, and it's like, yeah. So I just kind of turned it off to the whole thing.
Logged into LinkedIn in months.
See, there you go.
Probably should.
Yeah, maybe it's you who hasn't responded to Patrick's request.
Yeah,
I'm raising my hand.
Think of that?
Goodbye.
All right,
we already said bye to you. He
all right.
He needs us to formally acknowledge.
Apparently, yeah. Who knows? Anyway, all right. I gotta run too. But
all right.
Good seeing you.
See y'all.
Thanks for
having me on your
joining
show.
us. Thanks everybody. Whatever. All right. We'll talk to you guys later. Thanks everybody. Have a good week.